Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jerry Sansing. I'm here with Mr. Ed Bennett. He's a candidate for the Del Mar College Board of Regents at-large position. There are 2 positions open, and there's 6 people that are running for those 2. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Bennett as if you didn't already know him, and I'm going to ask him some questions today. And he has been real concerned about the openness of the records at Del Mar College. We've uncovered some very interesting facts and figures. I'm very pleased to have worked with Mr. Bennett because he's a master's degree in CPA, accountant, and you couldn't ask for anything better for Del Mar College at this stage of the game. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bennett a question here. I'm really looking at the newspaper article today where all of the candidates were presented by the Caller Times. And one of the questions was, why should you hold the office you were running for? And your answer, Ed, was restore fiduciary responsibility. Can you address that and say
Absolutely. Thank you, Doctor. These are non-paying positions. There's 9 of them. The only reason the people elect these representatives is to watch after the college, watch after the taxpayers' dollars. That's their job. They get no pay, but they've still got a great deal of responsibility. And that responsibility is to the taxpayers and to the college. At this point, the new budget's $80 million plus per year. That's $300,000 every business day.
Well,
and the board has a fiduciary responsibility to make certain those funds are spent appropriately and not wasted. I have sat in that boardroom for meetings over the last year, most of them with you, and I've watched and I paid attention when the CFO gets up to present the budget or to go over the checks that were written. And by the way, the CFO doesn't have any accounting background whatsoever that I can find.
no.
But nobody asked any questions of the unqualified CFO. So it appears as if they're accepting a guy that doesn't have any accounting background as being an authoritative source on how to spend the money, the $300,000 a day, and not even questioning it. I have seen no questions, no pertinent questions.
Right. Well, it's my understanding too that in your delving into the business at Del Mar College and what's online, that we're 30-some-odd% more expensive, or it costs us 34% more to get a student through than other colleges.
And that's based on information that I got online. That particular information came from a website that is actually funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Okay.
So I have a lot of confidence in that resource. It was about $12,000 for a Del Mar student to get through. I'm not seeing those numbers here, but it seemed to me it was about $12,000, a little bit more than $12,000 per year. Here it is. It's been averaging, well, in 2008 it was over $13,000 a year, and it's come down to, in 2012, $12,368 per year for each Del Mar student to get through, whereas in 2013 the U.S. national average is $9,089. So we're clearly at least $3,000 more per student per year.
Right.
And if you start putting 10,000 students times $3,000, you've got a whole lot of money.
Right.
Now that, not only is that a lot of money, that's an indication of something. And all these numbers that I'm finding, and you and I are doing the research, and we're doing good faith research. Obviously, we can't get the information from the college because neither of us have 27 million bucks.
That's right.
So we're doing good faith research, getting the numbers that are available on the internet, and some of these sites are government sites, Bill and Melinda Gates, and these are solid sites, and they've got good information. But the statistics, the numbers that we're getting, are indicators of something. You can't just look at the raw number and say, okay, it costs $3,000 extra per student. Big deal. Well, it is a big deal.
Right.
But it's one of many. because we've got other indicators. For instance, the debt per student. Right now, or a couple of years ago, the most recently available, it was $9,890 per student debt at Del Mar.
Okay.
They've got about $100 million outstanding. Now, that if you compare that to all the schools in Texas, an example is Wharton Junior College,
Mhm.
a fine school, $632 per student debt.
Wow.
Now, that in and of itself, and most schools are below, and some are well below Del Mar in debt currently.
Mhm.
But if we were to pass the $157 million bond issue, that would increase the Del Mar debt per student to well in excess of $23,000 per student.
Wow.
Right? Right now it's at the high end. That puts it completely off the chart. Our tax rate in 2008, we had the second highest community college tax rate in Texas. Another just example of something wrong. You add all these things up, compare all these numbers, and you see Del Mar is probably the least efficient run community college in Texas.
Right.
That's not something we need for Corpus Christi. We've already got a problem with CCISD graduating people that can't read above the 4th grade level.
Right.
And that's only the 70% that do graduate, because there's a 30% dropout.
Mhm.
So when you look at all these statistics, you say, something's wrong. Now, everything's off the chart. On a bell curve, we're 2 standard deviations removed from the center.
Mhm.
That means there's something wrong with every statistic I'm looking at. And then when you look at the enrollment decline, now since 2003 it's declined 6.6% since 2003.
Mhm.
Since between 2010 and 2013, it declined 14%.
Yeah, right. I remember those numbers. Yeah.
So enrollment's declining, costs are exorbitant, debt per student's completely out of range, and then we look at the bad debts.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, now your PIA was the thing that initiated the bad debt research that we did,
Right.
and exposed the one journal entry for $185,000 plus, and it was labeled third-party bad debt, and it included Kingsville, Texas A&M Kingsville for $54,000.
Mhm.
Didn't make any sense to us.
Right.
But if a business has bad debt, and they do, they try to collect it. They send collection letters. They don't write it off and say, well, we had bad debt.
Right.
They send collection letters, and if it's $54,000, they file a lawsuit.
That's right. And the thing that bothered Ed and myself when I got the results of that 5-foot stack of papers, that with nothing redacted, folks, and that's the big contention now. But there was not one single document that was in evidence that they had tried to collect any student debt, third-party debt, or anything else, because I specifically asked for any return receipt cards from U.S. Postal Service and so forth and so on, and none of that existed. And what prompted me to ask Ed to look at this, we were both sitting at a workshop when our CFO, Chief Financial Officer, who, as he said, is not credentialed for that, said that he was going to try to get the write-off letters to the president authorization, because he'd made every attempt in the world to collect those debts. And we had absolutely no evidence of that. So that's one thing that the board members need to be more involved over there in the process, the accounting and so forth and so on, particularly if we don't have the head of the whole business department over there qualified to do it. And the Southern Associations of Colleges and Schools has indicated that that should have been a temporary job when they had their last review, and that he was indeed not qualified. So.
And Doctor, I think the quote was, all collection efforts have been exhausted.
Right.
Now, how do you exhaust those before you send a certified letter?
Well,
And before I exhaust my efforts, I've sued somebody.
That's right.
I'm just thinking the criteria is real bad over there.
Right.
And if you were in business and you didn't collect your accounts receivable, you'd be out of business.
Right.
That's not the case for a state agency.
Right.
You know what they do? Well, it's very evident. They raise your tax rate.
That's right.
And in 2008, Del Mar had the second highest tax rate of any community college in Texas.
Mhm.
And it hasn't declined.
No.
It stayed about the same. Now, others may have come up. I don't know. It's difficult to get current data. We're working on it continuously. But every indicator points to a problem. Every indicator.
Mhm.
Now, how big a problem is it? Well, if we're 30% less efficient in getting our students through, if it costs 30% more, then the $300,000 a day may be 30% wasted.
Mhm.
That's a big number.
That is a large amount of money. Another thing that I've noticed in here that, and you've worked and know several of the faculty members over there, particularly the Kleins, who are highly involved in the American Association of University Professors. I'm on that board. Actually, I was the founding vice president. Dr. Ann Thorne was the one that spearheaded that. And what our major concern is academic freedom in the classroom, and then shared governance. The faculty should be involved with all of these administrative decisions that are made, because that directly affects on my ability to go in and teach a class. And my basic premise is, it's always been at Del Mar College, the only role that the administration should have is to provide me with what I need to give the students the best education possible. And there's no other reason to have a bloated administration.
Now, they've got a couple of different bodies of rules over there. One's the board rules and one's administrative rules. I don't know if there's more than that.
No, those two policies, yeah.
Okay, now, they write them. And they write the policies.
Right.
And you and I witnessed a year or so ago the obvious breach by them of their own rules.
Mm-hmm.
And that was terribly disturbing. And then they didn't learn a thing from it.
No.
They didn't learn a thing from it. And then subsequently, I did a PIA for what I thought would be a reasonable general ledger trial balance, detailed trial balance printout. And I got a quote for almost $27 million.
Yep.
Again, they look at the law and they say, doesn't apply to me.
No.
And I know they looked at the law and said that because as soon as I filed a complaint with the Texas Attorney General,
Mm-hmm.
the entire attitude changed.
Right.
And prior to that, I filed some, and you had the same problem too. I filed some PIAs for information, and I go in to look at it, to view the information, because I don't want to pay the money to copy it. It gets very expensive, not normally $27 million. But we go in to look at it, and the information I requested wasn't there, but other information was there that I hadn't requested. So I left a note, said, thank you for this information, but it was not what I wanted. And then I sent a follow-up letter saying, you didn't provide me with what I wanted, this is what I want. The PIA officer sent back one time an email and the next time a letter saying that we provided you with the information and we'll be happy to give it to you again. Well, it wasn't the information.
Mm-hmm.
So here we get 10 days between these letters, and they take every bit of 10 days. In fact, they take sometimes many more than 10 days.
Right.
So here I am trying to get this information, and I go back on two different occasions for the same information, and I'm given different information. Until I contacted the Attorney General, where as soon as that contact was made, I got an email saying, oh, with the additional information we received, there wasn't any additional information. It was the same information I'd already given. And goodness, they emailed me a PDF, 2 PDFs, of the information I'd originally requested, which was probably 40 days prior to that.
Oh, yeah.
So I keep getting stalled longer and longer. You and I are doing an investigation because we keep seeing things that don't look right. So we want to find out more about it, and neither one of us has told anybody what we're looking for, and we keep looking, and then it's like a flow chart where you change directions when you find something. So we can't tell you what we're looking for, we can tell you what we find. And we will tell you what we find. We're going to be completely open with it. If we find nothing, like, let's say the $54,000 at Kingsville, that was written off that said Kingsville owed it. If we find that they didn't owe it, we'll report it.
Right.
Now, the book said they owed it. Kingsville told the Channel 6 news reporter, the investigative reporter, Andrew, they said, if we owe this, and we may, we'll pay it.
Yeah.
Well, but they'd never gotten an invoice for it.
They didn't know they owed it.
So how would they know?
Right.
They couldn't know. And then, if all collection efforts had been exhausted and they hadn't sent an invoice, what did they do?
Well, that's a mystery to me, Mr. Bennett.
But as we find more and more information, and these things are taking us down paths. I saw a comment on the College Times article on Sunday, and somebody called CC1234. She said, "You got the information, tell us what you got. Tell us what your conclusion is." I haven't gotten the information.
Yeah.
I've been promised the information,
Yeah.
but that's just a part of the investigation. That's going to tell us what we need next. And the reason this takes so long is we don't have access to that information. This is really an internal auditor's job, and if the school had employed an internal auditor, they have a vacant spot for one, have had it for well over a year. If the school employed an internal auditor, that person would be doing this work very efficiently because he could trace down all the transactions. We see the posting log, we see what accounts it's posted to. If it says Kingsville paid, we follow that into the posting log and make sure it's posted to Kingsville. But we have to do it step by step. He would have to do it step by step as well, but he would have it electronically and do it very efficiently. We don't have that luxury.
Right. Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they do everything they can to stall it out. I asked for a document that should have been readily available, and what I'm told over there at Del Mar College by the person in charge of Public Information Act requests is that they have by law 10 days to provide me with the information, and that by gosh, they're going to go ahead and take the full 10 days even if that document is available. Now, if you go back and read the codes for the Open Records Act, then it states if it's readily available, if it's right behind you in a file drawer, when that request is made, you open that file drawer and you plop it down in front of them right there on the spot. And, I just can't believe that the people at Del Mar College are put in a position, I guess, by higher administrators or attorneys to sign off. Now, I think somebody was really duped to sign off on a $26.7 million bill and 123 years to get it, folks. I mean, that was just ludicrous. So I don't know if that person that signed it, if there's any remorse or maybe resentment for being the one that had responsible for that, I don't know. But I just hate to see employees put under the gun like that.
And her name appears on it, and nobody else's.
That's
So,
right.
so if she was coerced into doing it, her name's still the only one that made the news.
That's right.
And it did make the news.
Yeah, well, okay, let me ask you this. If you are elected by these fine folks listening out here, what would you propose? Let's just take the Public Information Act request. What would you do as a regent to ensure that Joe taxpayer could walk in there and in a timely manner and in a reasonable cost, if any cost, get public information?
Let me tell you, I'm afraid that if I get elected, I'm going to be one board member with 8 opponents on the board. But that doesn't bother me.
No.
I'm going to, and the only way I can accomplish anything is to be absolutely open. If it's not confidential, I'm going to make sure it's published. There's the meetings over there, the open meetings, very little information is conveyed. Now, there's a lot of trinkets given out in award ceremonies, a lot of pictures being taken, and a lot of time consumed by that. But the substance part of it, very little. I'm inclined to put absolutely everything out in a public domain where people can see it. I'll have an email address where people can send me questions or address problems. And let me tell you, after announcing that I was running, I have run into people that have told me horror stories. Absolute horror stories. But I don't mind if we're spending $300,000 a day. There's no reason why we can't put a person full-time responsible for PIAs.
Right.
All right, it can still be done within that $300,000 a day budget.
Sure.
Our obligation as a college is to be open to the taxpayers who happen to be funding the $300,000 a day.
Right.
So,
Well, you know, if you are open and people know about it, then that's gonna, and they know they can get it, and it's already pre-published, they don't have to go and feel like they need to coerce somebody to get it out of the files over there, then the PIAs are gonna drop to little or none. So, there
and
goes
quite
that
honestly,
cost.
we are probably asking the most intense PIAs.
Mhm.
We're probably sending the most intense ones in there, and they're not very. It's just for records,
Right.
printouts,
Mhm.
copies of invoices. They,
Well, another thing that is disturbing to me as a taxpayer, Ed, is I've followed the billings of a lot of those attorneys over there. And in those, I've seen PIA Sansing. Now, I don't think that everything that I ask for over there needs a complete legal read by whoever's in charge of public information. They say, hey, you know, this document's available, so let's just go ahead and provide it to him. He's gonna come in here and sit down and look at it and probably photograph it, and that's the end of it. But to have $400 and some odd an hour attorneys.
and I want to address that. Augie, we've seen Augie's contract,
Yeah.
and it's clearly less than $200 an hour. But for some reason, we're using extensively a firm out of Austin that charges $400 plus an hour. Now, they do get a 20% discount, which drops it down to slightly less than $400 sometimes. But those are really high attorney's fees on an hourly basis for the Corpus area. And it doesn't take, and there's some reasons for a $400 an hour attorney, but not to review a PIA.
No.
So we're not running that efficiently either, and I don't know why. Probably because it's not their money.
Right. Well, another thing that concerned us, Ed, I'll just throw this out too, so the public knows what's going on, is to keep an eye on the title work that was done on the acreage for the proposed Southside campus. And there are a lot of really fine real estate attorneys here in town that could have accomplished that, I think, in a much more reasonable price tag than going out of town for that type of work.
I'm certain they can negotiate $200 or less. Augie's got incredible credentials, and he's charging less than $200. And that 95 acres really disturbs me because, first of all, I don't know why it was bought at the time it was purchased, and that money could have been used to repair the roofs or the buildings over there at the campus and not put us in this cash bind that now, because we've deferred maintenance, which doesn't make any sense to me. We've deferred maintenance, so we have to borrow money to fix it. We should have fixed it with that $7 million.
And then, you know, another question I've got for you is this quest to contract all services out, like the custodial service at GCA. That's costing the taxpayers a minimum of $81,000 to $82,000 per month. And what we have working over there are part-time people with no benefits and so forth and so on. And I would appreciate it, I won't say if, but when you're in over there, would you take a look at the economics of that boondoggle over there? Because
Actually, that's a component of that $27 million invoice I got, or quote that I got. I wanted the transactions for the custodial service for 10 years because I've heard that was a cost-saving measure And to save cost, that means that we had to be spending more than $1 million a year before we changed to the contract services. And I want to see that. And that's part of what I asked for, and they slapped me back a letter that said if you pay us $26.7 million, you can look at it. And that's one thing. The local people, we need them from groundskeeper all the way up. These are all full-time positions. Right? It's not 20 full-time positions, it's 5, 7, I don't know the number.
Right.
But you don't contract out positions that should be full-time positions. There's no way a contractor can provide the same service for cheaper money than you can do.
Right.
We need those people back. Some of those people really got to run around. They were terminated just prior to
Well, the custodian that we had in our building for a long time, Mike Reardon, he was a Coast Guard veteran, and he paid into the retirement. You know, you can pay into it for your service time and so forth and so on. I think when they fired him, he was within 2 to 4 weeks of retirement.
And that's an example of how they've been treating people. And I've heard horror stories from adjunct professors that have been working over there 7 years and been treated horribly. There is no reason to treat people like that. And I'm looking at the budget, and I'm seeing a decline in the cost of instruction budget for the professors. And that's a combination of several things, including changing from full professors or full tenure track people to full-time, part-time, or full-time temporary, part-time workers. It's reducing the amount we pay for instructions, which is the only reason the college exists. Now, you might wonder how instructional cost is going down, yet the budget's going up.
It's called administrative bloat.
And what are we getting for that?
Well, what I get is more paperwork to fill out, more questionnaires. Let's just heap it on the faculty member, you know, and that'll justify our position of hiring this assistant to the assistant to the assistant.
Dynasties of people that create roadblocks like that letter I got. And how many people, that was probably a pretty big discussion to get that letter out, to get somebody to sign a $26.7 million letter. But I'll tell you, when we had our little 15-minute meeting, and you and I both went in, we met with Augie and Mr. Johnson, the controller, but if you looked around the room, we had a bunch of six-figure people sitting around the room.
Sure.
And I missed the contribution, other than Dr. Sloan gave us water.
Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't see the contribution of any of the other administrators that appeared to be a whole bunch of six-figure people.
Yeah.
The one that I noticed was conspicuously missing was Dr. Escamilla.
Yes, no Dr. Escamilla in that critical discussion. By Augie, he means Mr. Augustin Rivera Jr. He's also running for, I think, one of the district judgeships. And I won't get into why he's not building Del Mar College these days, but you know, I think he did a fantastic job, and that tells you that somebody really screwed up at Del Mar College when an attorney can go in there and straighten things out in 15 minutes or less. It was actually 14 minutes and some odd seconds. I was timing it, and because I had to get back to class. But you know, it's just insane. That should have been a red flag from the very beginning. And I've got a Public Information Act request in that I submitted on September the 4th. It's for air quality testing in one of our buildings over there, academic buildings. The word should have been back to me on September 18th at the very latest, and I didn't hear anything for another 10 days after that. And then I questioned it, and then I get this notice that a certified return receipt letter had been sent out to me, okay, on the 18th. Well, I went over to my post office with the numbers and so forth, and they said they had no record of it. And then at that meeting that Ed and I went to, the director of Human Resources was there. She's the one in charge of
I believe that's
Information
executive
Act.
director now.
Oh, executive director, okay. And, you know, she had indicated that they were trying to track the letter down from 6 Points, and she said, we've got it tracked down to Gulfway, which is the main post office. And until this day, this is October 7th, I still have not seen that letter or any evidence that the post office has sent me the notice of certified, receipt attempts to deliver. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's just bad luck on their part, but it just frustrates me to no end that there's all these roadblocks and just put up at every minute, and that's not being open and transparent.
And if an entity has nothing to hide, why go through all these hurdles?
I don't know.
Now, I want to, these are symptoms. Everything we run across is a symptom of a bigger problem, I believe, because too many symptoms are out there. But I want to make it clear that we went to a meeting, actually you're president of the Taxpayers Association, and you had an open meeting there on Saturday where Dr. Escamilla presented the capital improvement program to the crowd. And I want to make it clear, the $157 million that is being requested now on the ballot is a reduced amount. It was originally $287 million, which would have made the debt per student very near $39,000 per student. Now, if you read what the president handed out on Saturday, you'll realize that they've got a $397 million total facilities needs plan. That's $400 million. Our enrollment has been declining. We've got two really nice campuses, I think, and some satellite campuses in addition to that. And I'm thinking, with the buildings we've got, now some need repair, which I think should have been repaired with the $7 million. But with the buildings we got, if we used some scientific method of utilizing the space, like Gantt charts or PERT charts, we could efficiently utilize the space we have and not require borrowed money to build new buildings, or certainly not a new campus. Right, that's going to increase the fixed cost, increase the variable cost. Right. In 10 years, we're going to wish we had a 25-cent tax rate.
Right. Well, another one of the candidates, I don't know who it was, said that they wanted to open up a weekend college over there. Now, many years ago, when I first hired on at Del Mar, I did not want to break ties with one of the community colleges that I was working for in San Antonio. So I drove up there on Saturdays and did 2 sections of anatomy and physiology class, or it was St. Philip's College up there. And then the president here, Mr. Venters, at the time, found out about that, and he said, look, he said, I've been trying to get faculty members to open up the classes on the weekend. Would it be possible for you to do that for us down here? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And I successfully ran weekend courses for, good 3 or 4 years. And then I was told by another administrator that came in that I was making too much money doing overload classes at 1/3 of my normal. I'll throw an accounting wrinkle into it.
Well, that's consistent with the rest of the budgets.
So I said, no thank you anymore. If that's the basic philosophy, I'm getting rich working for 1/3 of what I normally make, then that's Del Mar College math, unfortunately. But we did have chemistry, and then no one wanted to really go over there on Saturdays and teach. But that's been tried, and one thing that bothers me is we have this quest for more and more classroom space. Well, if we could efficiently utilize the classes and the times that we have now, then it would make we wouldn't have that crunch right now. We could go ahead and take care of all that deferred maintenance, get the roofs patched up and so forth and so on, and it wouldn't be near as expensive. But it just takes a time analysis and go by and say, okay, this classroom shut down from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock the next morning. Well, run afternoon classes. It's just that simple, evening classes. And, utilize the space efficiently.
And it bothers me that we're reutilizing or changing the utilization of buildings on these plans. Right? We're gonna gut the administration building and make it a student center or something like that.
And the main hub for all the,
Why are we doing that? Right?
well, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is the way I.
You
look
got a
at
fine campus there.
things.
If they clean the grounds up a little bit and maybe clean the restrooms occasionally, it would be a very pleasant place to visit,
Yeah.
which a college campus should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's there for the students. And then I would like to say that, Ed, you've hit a nerve with one of the Caller Times editorial person. He's the editorial editor emeritus, Nick Jimenez, and he wrote a real good article that came out Sunday in the paper about this whole debacle with the 26.7 million. And then he quoted in there, and he said, it's like, go away, boy, you bother me. And it bugged me for hours on end. I said, I know that quote from somewhere, and it finally hit me. So that was out of the Warner Brothers cartoon, the Foghorn Leghorn. And he used to tell the little chicken line. He said, go away, boy, you bother me.
And pretty much that's what they told me when you
I
sent
think-
out a
I
letter
think
for 26.7 million.
You got $26.7 million in 123 years to get records out of an institution that's only been in business for 75 years. And you only asked for the last 10.
That's right.
That was...
And for only 7 accounts on the general ledger. And most of them are third-party bad debts, which you would think wouldn't have much activity.
Right. Well, I appreciate your backing the retention and attraction of qualified full-time tenure-track faculty members as a board member of AAUP, as I said. And you know, without a strong academic program, no institution is going to survive. I mean, you know, it's crazy.
Doctor, I've had the pleasure over the last several years to visit my children at universities. And my daughter graduated from Texas Tech. I went to U of H. Fine state schools.
Right.
Really fine state schools. But we had another daughter that went to the Naval Academy.
Right.
And I have never been as impressed with the university as I was when I first stepped onto that campus.
No.
And they set their standards high and they don't compromise.
No.
And you know what kind of people they graduate? They graduate first-class people.
That's right.
If you get through there, everybody knows your quality.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason we can't have that kind of quality here.
Well, we had it when I was here, Ed, when I got here 25 years ago. This was probably one of the top 10 community colleges ranked in the country. And we had a faculty that was equal to none.
And we still have,
You know, I mean,
we still have some wonderful faculty.
Oh, yeah.
The tenured people, they'd be tough to beat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a history course in Harvard is going to cover the same thing as it is in Del Mar.
Right.
And if the professor's just as good as a Harvard professor, you're getting that education at Del Mar for a
Right.
greatly reduced cost.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got good professors. We need to, the $300,000 a day we're spending, let's spend it on professors. Let's treat people right.
Right.
There's no reason to abuse your authority. You've got both responsibility and authority as administrators. Let's look at the responsibility. Let's put it in line with your authority and follow your own rules.
Right.
But let's bring in some quality people. And if the adjuncts are quality, let's bring them in.
That's right.
And, okay, it's going to cost you more money. Let's reduce it somewhere else for that $300,000 a day.
Well, you know, the tab for faculty members has dropped, and like I say, everything else, including administration, is going up in a ratio. And that shouldn't happen, folks. It really, we shouldn't be paying administration more than we pay faculty members as a whole.
A college is known by its faculty.
Right, not as administrative.
You think back on your college days and you remember the faculty. You probably don't have any idea who the college president was.
No.
I know I don't know.
Yeah.
And it really didn't have any impact on me,
No,
but my professors did.
right.
Doctor, I guess we better wrap this one up.
Okay, well, I appreciate you doing this for us, Ed. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, we've prepared some graphs. This shows the debt per student. As you can see, we go down the list. We start with the lowest debt per student is Ranger at 0. Then we progress forward, $147 per student. Now, as we go down, you can see it progressively gets much larger until we find Delmar at $9,899 per student. Now, there are clearly some with more debt per student than Delmar, just a handful. But please notice that if we were going to include the $157 million bond, it would be another $7,000 higher than the highest one on here. And if we were to include the $287 million additional bond that was initially proposed, it would be completely off the chart. Right now we peak at under $20,000 per student. With the current bond issue, it will exceed the $23,000 per student. At the initial $287 million, it would have been approximately $38,000, maybe $37,000 per student with the current enrollment. That's completely off the chart. No one else even approaches that level. Now, let's look at another chart here. This is the tax rate per student. The tax rate of the college district. You notice how we start low and go high. If we look at the colleges that are listed, they start very low, 0.011, and they incline until we reach way down here at the bottom, Delmar, 0.258. There are two of them that are in excess of the 0.258, so that puts Delmar at the very top of the tax rate. 258, almost the highest. In this case, it's the third highest. Now, if we look at the number of students increase, the enrollment increase from 2003 to 2012, we see Delmar had a decrease of 6.6%. Let's see how the rest of the colleges fared. Texas Southmost, I believe they got taken over by University of Texas Pan Am. So there's probably a pretty good explanation for that. There's some others that had decreases, but as you can see, most of the colleges in Texas had increases. So, Delmar is off the charts for debt per student, at the very high end of the chart for tax rates, at the low end of the chart for increase in students since 2003, between 2003 and 2012. It actually had a decrease, whereas most colleges had an increase, and some had substantial increases. And that makes sense. There are more people going to college. So, all of these figures, when you look at the statistics, all the statistics taken together indicate that Delmar is one of the least efficiently run colleges, community colleges, in Texas. And these are the numbers. These are all historical numbers. They're indicating one thing, and that is inefficiency.
Okay, Ed, you indicated you found some more interesting facts in your discussion, or in your
My research.
research.
I have it, and actually this comes out of Del Mar's annual report. The budget's now around $80 million a year, and I'm looking, in my mind, the only reason a college exists, and that would be any college, is to educate the students.
Yes.
That's the only purpose of a college. There's no other purpose.
Mm-mm.
So I'm looking at the Del Mar annual report, and they spend less than half that budget on what's called instruction expense, which I assume is all the professors,
Right.
full-time, part-time, tenured.
Yeah.
And I noticed in 2011, it was 35.6 million. 2012, it was 34.475 million. In 2013, it's 33.766 million. It's going down.
Mm-hmm.
Now the budget's going up.
Right.
The cost of the instructors are going down.
Right.
Yet that's the only reason the college exists.
Right.
So where's the rest of it going?
Well, I've always been preached, Ed, that, what we've been going through is called administrative bloat, and over the last 10, 15 years. And, we far exceed what we used to pay in salaries to the administration. But every time I turn around, there's another ad for an administrator, and then they come up with the idea of early retirement to get rid of us old coots that make too much money. We don't do anything but sit around, drink coffee, and snooze all day. And it's gotten to be totally out of hand. And I've noticed that we get budget cuts, we can't do this, that, and the other. And I do know that our instructional budget in our department's down this year significantly. And I don't understand it. I thought that, as you said, we're there to teach students, folks, to educate the public and the members of the Del Mar College District, the taxpayers and their children and so forth. So I'm just thrilled that you're looking into this and can make more sense out of it than I've been able to do. I'm not an accountant.
And I'll tell you, Doctor, we are the second most illiterate city in America.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a good community college.
Right.
And they need instructors. We've got to have, I've heard it referred to as the 13th grade.
Right.
At CCISD, they've got a 30% dropout rate. The people that graduate, many of them can't comprehend what they're reading. Their reading skills at the 4th grade level or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to teach them, or else we're going to be providing for their welfare the rest of their lives.
Right.
You can't have a 4th grade reading ability and make enough money to survive unless you're in the oil patch all the time.
Right.
And by the way, the oil patch goes through cycles that go up and down. In 1986, when oil hit $10 a barrel, there were no jobs.
Right.
And is that going to happen again? Probably, because it always has.
Right. It's a good possibility.
So we need a good community college. We need instructors at that community college. Why are we spending more than half the budget on non-instructional expenses?
Well, I wish I could answer that question. I'm just astounded myself. I thought we'd be spending an awful lot more than that. And then, we have all these cost-saving things like hiring custodial services out, and they're substandard as far as I'm concerned. And
By the way, that's over $80,000 a month for that custodial service.
right at $82,000 per month.
And that's $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can hire a lot of qualified, dedicated, local custodians for that amount of money.
Well, we had them for years. I mean, I think now is third year, I think, that this custodial service and the groundskeepers have come in. And the service has gone straight to the
And that was a cost savings measure.
It's supposedly.
We need to see the cost that were saved by spending $1 million a year for contract services.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm baffled. Did it cost $2 million for the custodians?
Well, I don't think so. I think the numbers of custodians, to my knowledge, and I'm researching this as we speak, it was actually about a third of what the CFO said that we had, you know, full-timers with benefits and stuff. So I'll get to the bottom of it, and we'll give you.
And it's not like we can get information readily out of Del Mar College. We've said in the past that doctors taught me how to file PIA requests, but he's also taught me how to call the Attorney General when I get crazy numbers, like $26.7 million.
Well, it's called self-defense, and you know, the whole thing's insane, and it's just very difficult to get public information out of Del Mar College, and every day it gets harder and harder to do that, as people, you know, don't want the truth, I guess, out on the streets. I really don't know what the.
And it's a public institution. It's the public's information. We're paying the bill.
That's right.
That $300,000 a day, that comes from us.
That's right.
Every day. Why we've got instruction expense declining while the total budget's going up absolutely baffles me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sat in that boardroom most of the meetings for the last 12 months, and it's an award ceremony normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm okay with people getting awards, but somebody better be looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
And somebody better be understanding why it costs a third more to put a student through Del Mar than the national average.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a social club over there, unfortunately, and you know, that's why I'm so incredibly thankful that you've decided to you know, bite the bullet and run for the board.
It's going to be a lot of work. And
It's going to cost you money.
it's going to cost me time and money, but somebody better do it. And somebody with the qualifications that I have better do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because the people over there sitting on that board right now, in my opinion, they've not done their homework.
No, they've done taxpayers a great disservice, the majority of them. And then you know, you take a look at the quality of education over there when you get rid of your seasoned professors and you know, custodians or anybody of value like that. And you know, we're slipping into, as one person put it, mediocrity over there as far as we are academically.
And it all starts at the top, whether it's fiduciary responsibility or academic standards. It starts at the top. If they're mediocre at the top, they're not going to be superb at the bottom.
That's right.
I'm upset. I think we aren't getting what we're paying for. We're certainly not getting a third more than the U.S. average.
Right.
Right. Let's get the standards back up. It used to be a great institution.
Oh, it was when I got here. Yeah, it was very highly ranked.
And we still have some good PhDs over there, some good masters.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes a terminal degree.
Right.
But we've got some good professors. What we need, in my opinion, is good full-time tenure-track professors that share the governance over there. They've got the academic freedom. That's what attracts good professors.
Right.
The good ones don't have to come here. We need to make it attractive for them, as it was when you were hired.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The city's a nice city. It needs a little work on the streets. It's in a nice location. The college facilities are actually really nice.
Mm-hmm. If they could keep them clean.
And stop deferring the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, that's another big thing, you know, with this $157 million for the two campuses, not only for new buildings, and I think we could do an awful lot better scheduling classes or classrooms that go empty for, you know, 3-4 hours a day. And, you know, I think someone needs to take a close look at that on building utilization rather than go ahead and put up new buildings over there like mad at a really exorbitant cost. But, you know, some of the contractors that built those buildings, the windows have leaked for years, and why didn't the former administration and current administration go back to those contractors for you know,
warranty work.
It's just not done. So, I doubt that I'm going to, you know, I haven't passed judgment on that $157 million bond, but I have great reservations.
Well, Doctor, I've passed judgment on it because it's a fiduciary responsibility issue, and I don't see that they've exercised that obligation with the $80 million. and the bad debts that we found, the write-offs,
Right.
I was appalled. So not only would I not give them the 157 million, I think the taxpayers ought to be in there asking them questions about the current $80 million a year,
Right.
the $300,000 per day. Doctor?
Well, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Appreciate it again.